Joining us now is Steve Law, President and CEO of American Crossroads, one of the country's most prominent conservative super PACs. Crossroads had a very good election day last week. So, Steve, I'm curious how much better it feels in 2014 than it did in 2012.
Well, it certainly beats that alternative, but I have to say that defeat is a pretty good teacher, though, because it forces you to reevaluate your assumptions. And one of the assumptions that we had to take a look at was that candidate quality is really the coin of the realm, and we needed to be involved in trying to help pick the best candidates who could be competitive this cycle, and they were. So it was great.
Steve, you focused a lot on candidate recruitment and as well as playing in some of the primaries. What did you learn about effective ways to spend the money you raised besides television advertising? What else did you spend money on that you found to be effective?
Well, in 2012, we and other groups spent a lot of resources just right on TV. A lot of reasons for that, but we felt like we needed to broaden the mix. And so this time around, we invested a lot more in online communications, and not only just doing more of it, but doing it very differently, treating it as its own unique medium, creating special advertising for that. We also did a lot on the data side, more underneath the surface. We did a lot of micro-targeting, as we always do, but we did some old-fashioned, old-school hard ID work, where we'd call you up and ask you what you thought, and then we'd integrate that with the micro-targeting. So we did a lot of things differently that we learned looking back at 2012 that were things that we felt like we could do better, and I think we've got the results that demonstrate that.
Steve, you mentioned before we started that you guys had to kind of do an apology tour in 2013. In 2012, a lot of your donors were not that happy with the outcome. Obviously, as I said before, they're very happy, presumably, with the outcome in 2014. What did you do in between to convince them that you guys were still worthy of taking their money and that you were going to spend it in a different and more effective way this cycle than you did last cycle?
I think one of the reasons why donors that we've talked to since the election are pleased is not just the result, but we led them through a process. After 2012, we and other groups like us, the RNC, the Kochs, the Chamber, and others, took a look at what we did, figured out what things needed to change. We communicated fairly continuously with our donors during the entire 2-year period, walked them through the things that we were going to do differently, told them how that was impacting the election in real time. And so as a result, when we ended up doing fairly well, people felt like they were part of the story. They weren't just presented a set of election returns, but they knew how we got there, and they were part of that journey.
You all are going to have to make a decision about how much to play in 2016 in the presidential versus other races, down ballot races. On the presidential, you've already got the RNC and some of your allied groups going pretty hard after Hillary Clinton with the expectation that she'll run and be the Democratic nominee. What is Crossroads' posture about how much you'll play in 2015 regarding Hillary Clinton?
Well, I think there is an optimal time to engage any of the potential Democratic nominees, with Hillary being obviously at the top of that list. And I expect we will start to focus on her. I think there needs to be a lot more research done, a lot of analysis to understand the best way to talk about who she is and what kind of president she would be for the country. We're going to spend time on that in earnest pretty early next year, and then at some point we'd engage the conversation in a public way as well. But whether it's her or Martin O'Malley or any of the rest of them, we're going to do a lot of studying, a lot of deep analysis, and then we're going to start to enter that conversation in a pretty public way.
I'm sure your donors expect you to spend a fair amount of money on Martin O'Malley research, but regarding Hillary Clinton, do you think she's the most likely next president of the United States? And if not, who is?
Well, I don't know if she's the most likely next president of the United States. I think she's more likely than not a Democratic nominee. One of the things I've always observed about the Democratic nominating process, though, is they're always looking for the new flavor, and she certainly isn't that. As I look at the Democratic Party right now, they seem to be involved in a very intense dialogue about what the post-Obama Democratic Party looks like, and it's hard to imagine going back pre-Obama is going to be a very satisfactory answer. They may just decide that's the default position, but they could also decide to look elsewhere, and we'll just have to see how that unfolds. If she is the nominee, I think she'll certainly be competitive, but I think we're going to have a really good shot at taking the White House in 2016.
Steve, as you pointed out a second ago, one of the biggest things you guys did right in this cycle was to help with candidate recruitment, and to put it kind of crudely, you guys managed to get acceptable mainstream conservatives to be the party nominees and managed to keep a lot of Tea Party candidates off the ballot. Is there any lesson you can learn from that as you head on the Republican side into 2016? Will you guys be either publicly or privately trying to guide that process towards the most electable conservative and try to manage the nomination process in a way that's most fruitful for your party?
Yeah. Well, on the presidential side, the presidential nominating process on the Republican side is a great gauntlet that filters out people who can't be competitive in a fairly broad way. So I don't know that there'll be a role for us in the nominating process other than to be focusing on the potential Democratic nominee, and we'll let that process work its way through. If you look at past Republican nominating processes, we don't always win the general election, but we almost always produce out of that field the most electable candidate. So we'll be continuing to focus down ballot, though, where I think we can make a positive difference in making sure that credible, effective conservatives who can win a general election are nominated in Senate races and in some House races as well.
Stephen Law, President and CEO of American Crossroads, a man who's known around here as Karl Rove's brain. Steve, thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it. I'll take that compliment.
All right. Thank you so much, and we'll be right back.